Never mind. I'll connect with you later.
Sure. Sounds good. Hey,
Hi, how's it going?
good. How about yourself?
Good.
Awesome.
Hi, Janet.
Hello.
How are you?
Monday. Can't trust that day.
Mondays are great. You're well rested, going into the week. Don't have a headache yet. Hi, Mark. How are you? Bob, can you hear us? Not yet. We're getting there. I can see you. You're on mute, sir.
You're probably better off with me on mute anyway. So
No, not when you're one of the guests today.
okay. No problem.
Did you get it sorted with Gallup or not?
No, well, they're working on it. The problem was I had an old email address from some time back that I don't have anymore. So they had to combine.
Yeah.
For everybody's benefit, I upgraded to the full profile so I could get everything besides just the first 5, which I'm really looking forward to getting into. But we had a little glitch, so it'll get there.
That's okay. We'll just do it without it today.
Sure.
How was everybody's weekend?
Mine was great.
That's good. Play with the
Lots of
grandbaby.
family stuff.
Yeah.
That's exactly it. Yep. As I tell everybody, no matter what they say about being a grandpa, it's better than that. So
What's so good about it?
oh, they're just so fun. And
Yeah.
Well, you get to spoil them and then send them back home. That's the
Well, there's
best.
that part. That part is absolutely true.
That's it.
Mine are like real nearby, all 3 of them. I have 3 granddaughters, 10, 5, and 20 months. And it's a hoot.
That's awesome.
Hey, Tad, how are you?
Good. How are you?
Good. How's your Monday going?
It's a Monday.
Oh my gosh. What is with you guys today? It's nice. It's sunny, blue sky.
And,
Beautiful.
I'm going to have to go get my depression medication now.
Yeah.
So funny.
Well, that's weird. That is a weird light I've got there. Sorry about that.
Where are you?
I'm actually at Concordia University. It's one of the places I hang out once in a while. They let me, they kind of give me the run of the place. So it's where I hang out in the afternoons a lot of time.
Here's my little pal today. Here's one of them.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
Oh, we've got we'll wait a couple minutes as people join in, and then we'll get going. Yeah, I kind of took the weekend off. I usually work a lot during the weekends, and I was unmotivated, so
Got to do that.
I didn't work very much this weekend, and so I feel great. I'm like, I'm ready to go.
That's good.
Yeah.
If I do this just right, it looks like I have a halo, I think. That's pretty cool.
You're beaming.
Yeah, I'm beaming. My wife would tell you otherwise.
All right, it is 12 o'clock. Let me share my screen, see if you can all see it. Let me know when you can see my screen.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so here's what we're going to do. We are going to introduce, I'll let Bob and Vin both introduce themselves, and they're going to share with you where they started and how their career trajectory, came along, and then where they are today. And if you guys could also remember how we met along the way, that would be awesome if you could share that with everybody. And then you can see they share 3 top strengths. They have 2 learners, 2 ideation, and 2 connectedness in this little group of 2. So there's 3 strengths that are similar in the top 5, and then a couple of differentiating strengths. So then we'll start going through their strengths profiles and asking them questions and talking to them about their strengths so we can learn more about these strengths combinations. So we'll start with you, Bob. If you could just give everybody some background on yourself so they can get to know you, that would be wonderful.
I would be happy to do that. And I promise I will not give you the whole thing because it would take 2 hours and you'd be bored to death. But
Yeah, we don't have 2 hours, but you do have a
no,
good
no,
5
no.
to 10 minutes.
Yeah. Well, I'll take a short period of time. I started off in the computer industry many years ago. I was in it for like 40 years total, and started off coding, and I was a software engineer and all that kind of stuff. And people kept pushing me into management for some reason. And then after I took, strength finders, that helped me figure out why. But that was just a natural thing, just push, push, push. And so the kinds of things that I do are based on my sort of strength on strategic right now. And that's based on background in doing strategic kinds of stuff like strategic marketing, acquisitions, building partnerships, lots and lots of product management. So all this in the software industry primarily. So now what I do based on all that is I consult with companies, and my strengths are on the front end of things. And that's where I help them because my areas, including learner and individualization and connectedness and all that, include strategic and ideation. And my strength, what I tell people is I'd love to help you on the front end and figure out how to do it and lay out a process. Just don't make me run it. You don't want that. So that's not my real great strength, but I help people figure out challenging problems. Brandy and I met when I was consulting for a company that she was at before. It was a public company in this cybersecurity area. I have a lot of background in cybersecurity, and we met and really hit it off. And she kind of makes you like, have you been talking to my friends? Because she understands she understands things so quickly after maybe a couple of decades of really digging into this whole area of Strength Finder. So I'm very interested in it. My education background was I got 1 year into a PhD in social psychology before I quit and joined the computer industry. So all this stuff is just really fascinating to me. And as a matter of fact, I push people toward it a lot. As an older guy, I get asked a lot, for help, and let's talk about my career and where I'm going and what do you think and all that. And one of the first things I do quite often is have them, if they haven't done it already, is take Strength Finder so they can get a real good idea and an even better understanding of what they're really best at. And then I say, if you go do what you're best at and you're passionate about, then you'll likely be successful. So is that enough, Brandy? Does that give you the background you need?
And I have a question for you, which is,
Sure.
you have a variety of clients. So, what types of clients do you seem to be able to help the most so that we all on the call know what kind of clients to push your way?
Oh, well, I appreciate that. I work in different industries. So obviously technology is an easy one for me, but right now the larger, I keep usually about 2 clients at one time so that I've got plenty of time to do whatever they need. The one I'm working with right now is about the number 7 insurance brokerage in the country, about a $2 billion company. I finished one project helping them set up a process that creates distribution strategy for companies that they've invested in. And then what I'm helping them right now, I'm helping the head of innovation with their digital transformation and what's going on there, and helping them figure that out and how to get it pushed out and publicized both internally and externally. So I I tell people I'm kind of embarrassed because as a with a lot of marketing background, the first thing I always tell people is, get really narrowed down and focused on exactly what it is you're doing. And then you go and you look at my website and it's like, I just say,
Let's look.
I-
What's your
I do-
website?
The
What's your
website is partneringsource.com. And really what I do there is help people. I just tell them, I help them with innovative solutions to critical challenges. And that's really kind of what it is. And it's based on helping them figure out some of the harder things that they're dealing with. And so I'm somebody that can come in from the outside it's not me. It's not the smarts that I have, which are limited, but it's bringing everybody together, getting a team together, getting them to think about what they're doing, and pulling out all the good ideas that they have and an understanding. And it's funny because by the time you do all that, at the end, everybody owns it and everybody's excited about it. And then from there, I just help them lay out, okay, so now what are you going to do? What are the plans and what kinds of processes do you need in place and that sort of thing. So I've worked in healthcare in the last few years, healthcare, cybersecurity, insurance, and then just general technology companies. I work with, sometimes I work with smaller companies that
Awesome.
are startups. So that's it.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Thank you for sharing that. And you guys can see, if you want to reach out to him, his email is bob@partneringsource.com here at the bottom of the website. Okay, let's flip over to our second guest, Vin. Thank you for being here with us today, Vin. Please just share with this crew who you are and where you've been and what you're doing now.
Oh, I'm originally from Wisconsin. So if you can hear the O's and the A's and the I, I moved to Texas as fast as I could. And that was in 2012. But where my career began was I was a musician from the time I was 10 years old. And I convinced my mom to let me play the drums, which she regrettably bought me a drum set at 12 years old. But she enjoyed the summers off where she sent me on tour and I could go, perform in parades. And then, I started writing music and I had this plan hatched from the time I was 10 years old that at 18, I'm going to join a band, I'm going to record and I'm going to tour. And that happened.
Wow.
Well, there was strategy already in my life, that I was already planning ahead what I wanted my life to look like. Well, I did join a band. We did record, we did tour, and the music went international. And if you can imagine, my hair was down to my shoulders and down to the middle of my back, and I was a headbanger. So loved leather and jean jackets and all that back in the day. And my career at that point was music, but I also did construction. Because I really didn't have that was the one part I didn't have a plan for. I didn't have a plan to go back to school because music was my life. I realized at the age of 24 that I was a learner and that learning was really important. I took some college exams, got in and started going for my bachelor's degree, obtained my first bachelor's, went on to be, and it's going to sound strange, I went on to be a pastor, a church planting pastor. So I would build communities.
Mm-hmm.
And I just had this natural way of going from person to person with my woo, and then had a strong communication aspect and could learn information quickly, disseminate that information quickly, and really draw people in. And so that's what I did. I've had radio programs. I have done a lot of public speaking and coaching. But then recently, had a career transition where for 20 years I was a pastor and I was also in sales. But I got really tired of doing sales and decided to go back and get my second bachelor's in psychology because I realized is I didn't want to get into the dark side of everybody's psychology. I carry that burden. So I looked at the positive side and found CliftonStrengths and fell in love with it. And when I moved to Texas this past March, started looking for work as a corporate trainer. And now I'm working with a company called Minimall as a traveling corporate trainer. So I train systems, I train soft skills, and I just love what I do. It's a passion of mine to just build people up and culture, and yeah, I just love it. So, but I'm working currently on my master's in strategic communications. And so I slid right out of my second bachelor's right into a master's, and I'm halfway done. And yeah, so I love what I do. And I met Brandy. So interesting. It was all around CliftonStrengths. Somebody in the field had told me, you need to reach out to Brandy. Is her name Lily or?
To this day, I don't know who connected us. I've thought about it. I don't remember who put, we just ended up in Grapevine in
yeah,
that Main Street bakery staring at each other going, why are we here?
Why are we here? All I was told is reach out to Brandy. She's a great connection. And then we started talking, and she realized, oh, you're into CliftonStrengths. Well, let me show you what we got going on here.
Yeah.
And then I took Strengthology and brought it to the company that I'm working for. And so, yeah, my objective, my goal is to then start training and coaching outside clients. My past coaching business was helping young business people, and I'm talking like early 20s, who are entrepreneurs trying to figure out what they want to do in life and how to make the most of the relationships. So I'm, I guess, technically a relationship coach. So I had one gentleman, really cool story. He heard me speaking publicly, had a really bad relationship with a girl that was in college, had a fledgling insurance business and investment business, and was broke. And he heard me speak, and he said, you know, Ben, I really need your help. And this is before CliftonStrengths. So I said, well, we're going to need about 30 hours to get to the root of the issue, and then we'll go from there. So we did 30 hours of coaching. He called me a year later and he said, man, I found a wife. I tripled my business in size, and I bought a house. And I went, what? Like, how'd you do that? And he said, you know, you just asked all the right questions and it challenged me. Mm-hmm. And so that's just one example of what I've helped, many others do in their world. And it's helped me tremendously. But now I take that 30 hours, I say, it'll take me about an hour to get to know you. And we can start digging in and diving and finding out exactly where you need to go. You're going to provide the solution. I just need to understand where you want to go. So that's it. That's me.
So thank you, Vin. Does anybody on the call have questions for either Bob or Vin? No thoughts? No questions?
So Brandy, is everybody on the call share the connectedness and learner? And
nope, not necessarily.
Not really, not necessarily.
Some people are here because they have connectedness learner ideation. Some people are here because they just love to learn from you guys about your strengths and how the strengths work together, sort of strengths enthusiasts. Yeah, so there's a variety. Some people I know really well on this call, and some people I don't know at all on this call. So it's open to the public. Anybody can join on any Monday they want to. We do it every Monday at noon. So
I'll throw something out there, maybe to get the conversation going. And that is, so how does connectedness as a strength play out, in people's lives? And for me, Number one is, connectedness means you see the connections. You kind of tend to not see things happening without being connected to something else. And I'm not a pastor, but I lean that direction. But the other thing it does as far as connectedness is I'm always thinking about, like, I'll be reading an article. I wonder if anybody else has connectedness does it. I'll read an article and I'll go, oh, Vin would be interested in that. I need to send this to him. I'll send links out. It's how I stay in touch with people. And I'm always making a connection between what I'm reading, and it's not like something that takes work to do. It just pops up. It naturally, I'm seeing it and how it relates to somebody else that I know. And it's something I think they might enjoy. The learner side, the way that plays out is I love to go into a company or an industry even that I know nothing about. And it's so easy now with everything available on the internet to dive in and start to get a sense. I still approach them with, hey, I don't know anything, but try to get some background before we start talking and really kind of have an understanding. So for instance, I'm working with this insurance company now, and I actually started looking into insurance there's a company that I started a few years ago in the cyber world. And we were thinking that insurance companies were who we needed to partner with. So I started digging into that, and it gave me a lot of background. So that by the time that I talked to this insurance company, I could at least speak the language. But the connectedness thing is something that's really interesting to me, because, I'll talk to people about, I do that, they're not connectedness, and they go, oh, really? You really do that? And so things that the way that plays out to me, I think things that we have strengths in, we undervalue, because to us, it's just intuitive. It's just natural that, I'll think of things or come up with, 5 ideas of how to fix a problem and that sort of thing. Whereas I look at people that are, like, for example, really good as project managers or something. And I'm just terrible at that. It's not something I'm very good at. And I really value that very, very highly. And I don't value the things that I'm good at as much, I think, normally, because it's just what you do, right? So I don't know anybody else's experiences in that regard, but.
Yeah. And I think also your strategic and connectedness, when you have both of those, there's a lot of connecting the dots from a very small, single action all the way up to the big picture.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Because connectedness does that alone without strategic, but then you add strategic in there, and all of a sudden you're playing through lots of scenarios, what if scenarios, and you're playing out, what could happen. And it's just, you're making all of these connections all over the place. And I think also with ideation, when you read about the definition of ideation, it says that you can take seemingly disparate things, right, and pull them together and see how they are connected, because so ideation has that. So then when you have ideation connectedness, you're also like, that's on steroids, right? Because now everything really truly is one, and it's all connected, and your brain is able to connect the dots and pull things together through connectedness, ideation, and strategic. So I feel like, you probably don't even realize how well your brain is making connections of all the things, where there's other people that it's very difficult to see, how all of those things are connected and in what way. So it's almost like anytime you open your mouth and say, oh, there's a connection here and this is it, I think it would be kind of like an awe moment, for other people who don't, intuitively or naturally make those connections, which is why you've probably got the response of, oh, wow, I didn't think of that, or, oh, wow, that's a great idea, or, oh, wow, I didn't even think about that being connected to this. You're right, because not everybody is thinking that way.
Yeah, and that can be a blessing, and it can also be a curse, because I had, Brandy, you and I've talked about this, where I met somebody new and wanted to, get them involved in a game, and within 5 minutes, the guy wanted to choke me. my strategy was was very strong at that point. I was trying to woo this guy and also make some connections, and he got really mad. Well, what I didn't realize is I was conflicting with his command and his activator, and he wanted to play the alpha dog with me. And I decided, you know what, I'm gonna humble myself, and I'm gonna come in through the back door. And I connected with him. I started to realize this very quickly, strategically realizing, oh, I got to build a relationship or this guy's going to beat me up.
You know, it's amazing. I'm looking, Brandy, at Ben. I'm looking at yours, and your top 10, all 5 of my top 5 are in there. So
Yeah.
we have a whole lot in common. I have another example of that, of what you just mentioned. Many years ago, I had moved to Dallas, had a job, cool job, new management team of a very small company. We killed it, but the owner decided he didn't like it for whatever reason. We all got dumped on the street. And a couple of weeks later, a friend of mine had connected me with a startup company, and I went there to consult. So having never consulted before, I really had no idea of how to do it, what I was doing or anything. And I made a really big tactical error. And that is, I went in, what it was, I'll tell you real quick. It was a company, they were in the government space. They did command and control software, and they had a lot of really neat graphical kinds of stuff. And they wanted to figure out how to commercialize that. How do I take that and I move it into the commercial software industry? And so they hired me to do that. I came in, I went around, I looked around for about 2 or 3 days. I went to the CEO and I went there to tell him what they needed to do. Well, that really wasn't what he wanted to hear that fast. I think he didn't want anybody to be able to figure things out that quickly. But when you come from both the background I had and then the way that my brain works, it was like, well, it was kind of obvious some things that needed to happen. And the end story is that they kept me on, but they kept me on for 9 months, and I just went and taught them lessons about the commercial software industry so they can figure it out themselves. So a lot of times it's not a good idea, and it can get you in trouble. Like Ben said, it can get you in trouble if you just start dumping on people too quickly. It's better to kind of hold back, really get to know them, build up trust, and then you can start to share some of those things.
Yeah, I think that's common. Like anybody who starts a new job, right? You get so excited, you go in there and you want to fix everything, and everybody's like, "Who are you? You haven't been here. You don't know, what we got going on, and why we're doing things the way we're doing."
And that's a problem, because for somebody that has this constellation of strengths, I've often said that some of my best value to a company is the first 90 days that I'm there, because I do pick it up fairly quickly, but I'm not constrained by what's gone on in the past. And I can share some things, and I'll be wrong some of the times, but some of the times the things will be really great. By the way, anybody that's ever interested in what consulting looks like, there's a good book by Patrick Lencioni called Getting Naked. And the one thing I took out of it, he said, if you're a consultant, be totally transparent, tell everybody exactly what you think, but with the caveat that you may be wrong. And he said, you'll be wrong 60% of the time. But he said the 40% that you're right is all they remember. They don't expect you to understand the business as well as they do, but just be open and honest and all that. Anyway, I'm diverting, but
yeah, and I think it's good to go in with, look, here's what's going on, and here's what we're going to do, but here's the plan, because most people, unless you're working with somebody like Jack, most people can't change quickly, and they need a minute to catch their breath and to change and to make changes and to change some other things while you're changing something else. And so most people have a very difficult time leapfrogging with change. And even you want to leapfrog because you see that this is going to make all the difference in the world. Let's go here now. It just doesn't work that way most of the time. Now, if you can figure out ways to get companies and to get people to do that, man, you can really, like, I felt like Jack was very good about that. He could really get us moving and leapfrogging and skipping some steps to move forward quickly. So we weren't wasting time building something that we were just going to let go anyway. But I think that's an art, and I think it takes a lot of practice. And It also takes, like you said, Bob, having the right set of people and teams around you to support that.
Well, you want to help. It's all you're doing is you're trying to help. But in a way, if you're not careful, it's really disrespectful.
Yeah.
To jump in and start telling people where they messed up, or you ought to do this, or without even saying where you messed up, but implying that by just the things that you're saying. So you just really need to take some time and build trust. So.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's where, taking and logging information, I call it observations. So I have an observations notebook. These are my observations. These are the questions that I have, rather than telling.
Yeah.
Just like when you're writing a book, you show, you don't tell. And the way to do that is to get people to start asking questions, making it look like it's their idea. You're just having a conversation. Hey, what about this?
Mm-hmm.
What are your thoughts about that? And then they start engaging in that. And they're like, oh, that's a really good question. But you're not telling them, you're asking.
Yeah.
And my director, he's a great guy. We have these conversations every day. And he said, asking good questions brings added value, because it starts to get people to start thinking, rather than telling them what to do. You're now provoking their thoughts. You're kind of bursting that bubble, if you will, and getting them to open up.
Yeah, and even though you guys haven't figured out, like, other people want to figure it out too. Like, they want to have, they want to figure it out for themselves, and they want to feel like they're having those aha moments. They just might be a little slower.
Well, their ideas are often better because of their background. One of the things I find a lot of times when I go in to help somebody, no matter who it is a lack of clarity. And
Sure.
so my strategic predominates there. And the first thing I do is I have this sort of standard way that I walk them through what I call strategic positioning, which is, what are you, what's the category, all these different things. And what's neat about that process, I just did that with the this digital transformation group that I'm working with. I had about 16 people, got 3 of them online. Luckily, I got a bunch of them in the room at the same time, and about 3 were online, and we walked through it. And we got down at the end, and the desired outcome, which has happened every single time I've done this, except one time, I'll tell you about that if you want to hear it sometime, but is that people end up with a sense of shared ownership of what they are, what they're doing, where they're going to go, all that sort of stuff. So I've found that works really, really well to get people, and it brings out the best in everybody. The cool thing about it too is it can get people off the top dead center, because about 45 minutes before we finish this 5-hour session, some of them said, we always got to this point and then we just stopped. we never got back past the let's bring all this together, and so that we're all on the same page. So it's true all the stuff that you guys are saying about letting people bring what they have to it and helping get them bring the best out of their own thinking. So lots of fun.
Well, I learned that from a coach down in Austin. His name is David, but my first time being exposed to coaching versus managing, if you will, David said something really important. He said, when you go to see a psychologist and you're trying to get help with a personal, you have 50 minutes of being engaged. And then they're like, oh, time's up. I've got another appointment. Well, you're just starting to get into the good stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So he said, it takes 3 to 5 hours to really dig deep and to get down and to just root out and cultivate all that good information. And that's where you start making the headway, right? And I learned a really valuable lesson. So rather than working with someone for an hour, take 3 to 5 hours. It may be exhausting to them, but you start really getting into the really good stuff by that point. And that's been invaluable for me.
Yeah.
I'm gonna flip the switch a little bit here. Tad, are you still on and can get unmuted here?
Yes.
So I want to loop you into this discussion because I know you weren't one of the speakers today, but Tad also has strategic learner and connectedness in his top 5 as well. So I know you probably think similarly to what these guys are saying, but you also might have some other angles that you come at things. So I just wanted to bring you in because you do have these 3 that we're talking about today. Is there anything that you've heard that you're like, oh yeah, you know, that's true, but I would also, you know, take it here or do this or do that? Not to put you on the spot. I seem to do that a lot.
Yes, you
Well,
do.
I'm sitting here listening and relating very well to what they're both saying. You know, one of the things I like to do is think a lot about things and strategize and do some of the things that they're doing. But one of the experiences I've had with my consulting business is the relational side. And that is when you know the answers and you're trying to help your customer be, you know, do what you see and know to be done. And it becomes a challenge to take them on the journey that they need to go on to get where you're at. And just to reverberate what they're saying, people, you know, you can say, here's a destination, but people don't want to be slammed into the destination. They actually want to go on the journey and have to go on that journey together to get to the destination. Otherwise, the destination really doesn't mean anything. And that sounds interesting because you would think that everybody would just want the answers and run and shortcut, but that's not the case. There's so many threads that have to be interwoven. And, you know, I don't know, the quilt work has to be done the right way to become the blanket that it was destined to be. And it's more about weaving that than it is just arriving here or being handed a quilt, so to speak. So
Yeah, having those shared experiences. And then also, I love your analogy because no 2 quilts are the same. You know, it's
correct.
like every time you go into working with, especially you all know from a strengths perspective, when you're working with people, you're never ever going to have the same dynamic with the same team, with same sets of people, with the same team, with the same agendas. Like everything is different every single time. And so we as consultants have to be so flexible in our approach of going, okay, well, this is what happened last time, and we can probably use some of this, but I understand that it's going to be different for this moment and for this team and for this company and for, you know, all these different other, you know, attributes that are coming in or playing in factors. And so and I think that as learners, all of us really enjoy that change, you know, mastering and applying things that we know, but then also becoming even more heightened in our abilities and in our mastery of being a consultant, because every time we do something, we not only use what we've done before, but we learn something new and we add it to our tool set or our repertoire.
There's kind of a family aspect that has to develop when you get a team, and I've done this, you know, you get off site and you spend some hours together, kind of working on and beating on things. You really don't know how much you don't know people until you spend a lot of time in a room together. And it's interesting how it starts out more formal and everybody nodding their heads and blah, 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 blah. And then you go through the stage where somebody's offended or they disagree, and it can get kind of hairy for a bit, but ultimately you hopefully come together and start creatively working together, and you actually create something that's totally unique and new. When you get to that level, you start to adopt each other, and it's almost like you become a family coming together, and it puts meaning into everything that you're doing. And it's not about so much about being smart or the idea, it's this unique coming together that really adds the power to what you're doing. So that's kind of my perspective from the connectedness and the learning side of it. And you know, these ideas and being strategic about it, it all kind of comes together in a soup. And, you can throw everything in a pot and turn the burner on high for 5 minutes, but it's really the simmering over time where all the flavors and everything blend and you come up with a great creation.
Mhm.
I
Yep.
would second that, Tad. That thing I mentioned earlier, that strategic positioning thing I do, I tell people when I start, I have no idea where this is going to end up because I really never do. I mean, I may have my own ideas about what they're doing and what I think will be there, but I never assume that that's going to be the answer because I've got 16 people here in the room, all with their different ideas and lots of creativity. And it's like, you got to wait and see, and you got to let it kind of come together
Yeah.
over some period of time.
What's really fun is when the transfer occurs and then they start to adopt and run with it.
Yes.
And all you have to do is steer a little here and steer a little there, but it really becomes their generation of this thing that being created. And it's really amazing when you watch it kind of just unfold in front of you.
I think what you said earlier too is true. If I just go in there and I start telling people stuff, they have no ownership and nothing is going to come out of it, or very little is going to come out of it. I mean, I could be maybe I'm really smart on that particular thing they're doing and I can tell them some really cool stuff. But if it doesn't come out of their engagement with the group and everybody having a piece of it, it's not going to lead to that, like you said, that spark that then makes them really want to jump in and do something. So, occasionally I've had that urge to want to do more than I'm doing. And I have to say, shut your mouth, Bob, let this happen. And the other thing you do, I'm sure you do this too, if you have some intuition about just looking at people and reading them, you need to bring this person out a little more, or you need to help this person become more engaged, or maybe somebody sitting there, you can tell they're kind of holding back. And so you have to find a way to kind of get them to say, well, what does anybody, hey, Jolie, or whatever your name is this all making sense to you? Or you have any reservation about where it's going? Or are we leaving something out or whatever, just trying to draw the group out. But it's the group product that's the really exciting piece of it.
A real lesson that occurred for me, I worked at a company and it was in trouble, and I turned the company around, and I'd made all these changes and these generated these great results and whatnot. And then the CEO brought in a consultant to work with me.
Mm-hmm.
And I had always been the change agent. I had always been the guy that was making things happen, lead the team, and so on and so forth. And then all of a sudden, here he comes, and he's got all these ideas, and he is so excited to implement them with me. Well, now I was on the other side of the street, and it took me a while to realize how defensive I really was. And it actually came down to, he came in my office and slammed the door, and we almost came to fisticuffs in my office.
Wow.
There was a lot of expletives and lack of appreciation for each other.
And it was bad, Tad, because you don't get heightened or react to anything. You're just very resilient.
I'm telling you, my command came out, and I slammed him into the ground, which I surprised myself when it was all over. I was like, did I really do that?
Yeah.
But the interesting thing was, we split apart in a heated fury, and then we came back together, and he made a comment to me. He said, I really respect where you're coming from. And he goes, in a way, I was kind of putting you to the test. And it changed my whole flavor of things. And I actually got to a point where I said, okay, I'll listen to you. And we finally found a way to work together, and then we became very good friends, and we're still best friends today. So, it's kind of a weird thing. You go through this process, but it started out really rough, and it ended up that there's some things that I did that really irritated some other people in the company, and he backed me on it. He said, no, he's doing this right. And I really appreciated his support at that time, but it's just, I know it from both sides of the street now. And when I engage other people, I often remember that, because I'll see other people with their conflict or their resistance or whatever, and it triggers my memory of the response that I had to the same thing.
Yeah, and I think what you're saying is it's twofold. One, it's the positioning of how someone comes in and the perception that they're presenting and what they're trying to do without listening first and getting, the whole story first. But second, it's from the other side, it's, somebody, like you said, could be just having their own internal, I can't see through this yet. I can't see how this is going to work out, or I can't imagine how this is actually going to do us good. Like they haven't worked through it yet. And so if someone's just trying to shove something down your throat that you haven't been able to work through yet, you're going to resist it until you figure out, okay, is whatever is on this spoon, is it poison, or is it something good for me, nurturing? And it's only then when you make that shift that you say, oh, okay, now I'm ready to receive it. I'm ready to hear it, take it in, and do something about it. And I think all three of us as coaches have experienced that, where we're so excited that we're trying to show somebody what, they can do, because we see all the potential in the world, and we see they would just do this, then they'll get this result, and they're just not ready. And you just have to say, look, the medicine is here, and do your own research, but when you're ready, take it, and let's move forward with this. But you have to wait till they're ready. You can't force them. You can't force another human to do something they don't want to do. So let me pause for a minute. Anybody on the call?
I think you also, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was just wanting to ask if anybody on the call, I want to give some space really quick to see if anybody has questions,
Please.
thoughts, feedback for any of these guys. Where's Brad when you need him? Okay. Did you have another thought, Bob? I'm going to move down to the bottom set of the strengths here in the second too. Do you have another thought before we do that?
Well, it may sound kind of weird, but I also think if you walk into a bunch of people and if you really love people and you really care about them, they get that. And that opens up a lot of doors. I'm not going in there and saying, oh, how much money can I make off this? Or
yeah, you're not trying
how
to
can I look really smart,
Yeah.
Oh, and that's that's been my that's been my experience, is people recognize when you're authentic, you're transparent, you are your willingness to listen, to be an active listener. And then something that I heard recently, I thought it was so awesome. Somebody came to Nelson Mandela and they asked him, well, how did you become such a great leader? He said, when I was a little boy, I watched my dad work with all the tribes, and he let every tribal leader share what they had concerns about, and he was the last one to speak. And then he digested everything they all had to say, and then he spoke. He said, I learned to listen and to observe and then bring the right information. And that, for me, that's something that I'm working on because my brain is so strategic, so quick to
and
make
you have
connected.
high communication too.
And I have high communication, so I'm a talker. Yeah, I like to talk.
Yeah.
So, and even when I brought a presentation before a CEO, he said, I have two questions, but I want to give you a couple minutes with your thoughts, and then I want the answer. And I was like, no, I have them right now. He said, well, that's great and everything, but I gotta go to the bathroom.
That's funny.
So I want to show you guys what I've been, looking at here on the screen too. So they all have strategic in the top 10. They all have ideation in the top 16, right? So we have ideation.
Mm-hmm.
All have connectedness in top 5. Learner is top 5. Individualization is actually top 13 for all these guys. So we can kind of assume that, okay, there's some very, similar things going on. So although we don't have yours, Bob, we'll still look at Tad and Vin's down here, and we'll just see if we have any sort of, okay, so we have harmony down here, which means that these two are not afraid of conflict. They don't mind conflict. And conflict is just part of the strategy. So it's usually harmony and strategy are opposites. So we'll kind of assume, Bob, that your harmony is probably fairly
I'm
low
pretty
as
sure.
well,
Yep.
because the strategic is high, and you just don't mind, saying what needs to be said and discussing it.
I have a question.
Yeah.
I noticed that Tad's woo and harmony are both low, but Vin has harmony way down there and then woo really high. My older daughter, by the way, her top one is woo, so I'm fairly familiar with that one and how it works.
So was
But it's
my daughter.
interesting.
My daughter's number one strength is woo.
Mine too. It's crazy.
Crazy. I know.
But it's interesting to me that because I look at her and I'm sure her harmony is up high too.
Yeah. So
Woo and harmony. So what's the relationship?
yeah, so to
between
answer
those
your question, the three that are together from a woo perspective are going to be communication, woo, positivity.
Ah, okay.
Those are the three that you find together around 50% of the time.
Mm-hmm.
So his communication and his woo is high because he also has high communication.
Right. Okay.
The harmony is usually connected with consistency, which you see
Yeah.
right here.
That makes sense.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, my consistency's low, isn't it?
Who cares about consistency? I don't care.
I
about
do.
Yeah, well, you're a purple people.
Discipline, and I care about the deliberation, and I care about this.
Oh yeah, all those things.
Green, orange, and blue, baby.
Yeah.
And you can see why, like, so having woo and communication both down here at the bottom for Tad, and positivity. Those three, that's normal to see these three
Right.
clumped together somewhere. They can be clumped together at the bottom, in the middle, at the top, but they're usually pretty close nearby one another. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, woo's not a strength for me. I don't care about wooing things. I'm surprised that communication's at the bottom. I mean, people say I'm a good communicator, but
yeah. So let me address that, because I love that you brought that up. People with learner are pretty good communicators because they affirm their own learning by teaching others, and they actually care about teaching in a way that sinks in to somebody else. So they are listening and learning and observing another person or an audience in order to say their message in a way that gets it across, in a way that people can learn it, grasp it, and soak it in. So although you're not exercising this through communication, you are exercising this activity through your learner.
The Brandy, also, it looks like we're all three high in individualization. I think that also plays into the way we communicate in terms of understanding how to talk to a different audience.
And also with the individualization, that tells me that consistency is probably low for everybody, because individualization is understanding how to treat each person, each situation in a customized, individual, diversified way. Where consistency is scale, right? It's treat everybody fairly, equally, scale everything, create balance, and create something that everyone can use.
Yeah, my daughter is her number one. Other daughter is number one is harmony, and she's also high in consistency, right? So she is all about being fair and at peace. And it's that whole make love not war kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
So
yeah, and so then as parents, what's very challenging is, how do I be myself, right? And then how do I also adapt when I'm interacting with this child who's opposite of me in a way that works for her? That's really a challenge and a balance. And this is why I say that people who are parents can be better managers, because they have to do what you do in management at home with their children. They have to learn that of, okay, I'm shutting my child down. And most parents don't know why, right? They've never done the CliftonStrengths, so they don't know why they're shutting their child down, but they can see that however they're interacting is doing something that is not working for the child. So then all of a sudden you're having to get really uncomfortable and adapt and go, okay, well, how do I do this more peacefully? And how do I just say you can do this over time? You don't have to do it all at once. And so then it's like, it's confusion, because as parents, you think you're going to have a child like you. And that's not, it's not true.
No.
Because you got together with someone else and they have different things going on, and you have all this heritage behind both sides of the family. You have no idea what you're actually going to produce and what you're going to get. And some of it can be shaped and molded, but there's also a lot of genetic code in there that just comes out and says, no, this is your child, and they're not like you. They're very different.
And that's interesting, because I have 4 daughters, and the one thing that they all communicate between each other, and I learned about, is they said, yeah, you got to be really careful around Dad. He'll pick up little signals here and there. He'll know exactly what's going on in your life, and you don't have to tell him a thing. Yeah, it's so, it is funny. And then even one daughter said, well, I'm going to have you take I'm going to have you, and this is a long time ago. She was my adopted daughter. She's older, quite a bit older, my oldest one. And she said, I'm going to have Mom and you do my top 10 favorite things, and you're going to know my personality. And I filled it out, and I was at like 90%, and Mom was at like 30%. And she said to me, she goes, I thought for sure Mom was going to kick your rear end. And she goes, how do you know this? And I said, I'm a people studier. I study people, and I can size them up really quick. And she started to figure out, like, oh, I got to not bring boyfriends around.
And my brother has high individualization, like y'all. He has high individualization strategic, and he has a whiteboard in the house where he lays out all the boys that he has 2 boys. And so all 3 of them, to me, they're the 3 boys. They lay out what they all want to do throughout the week. And they make sure that they do something that everybody wants to do, which I think is brilliant, because when I was raised, one of my favorite things to do is hiking, but we never went hiking because, my dad wasn't into it. He was into other things, so we did his things, and I'm not saying we always did his things, but I'm just saying, like, we didn't do maybe like one of the things that was so fun for me that I would have had us do, if I was ever asked, what do you want to have us do as a family? I'm harmonic, so I probably wouldn't even ask for it, though, because I knew he wouldn't like it. I would have
need to be
everybody likes. Huh?
Need to be deliberate like that, though, as a parent.
Yeah.
Your brother,
and to encourage the kids to be themselves, and so that they know who they are when they come into their teenage years, and they're trying to become, their person and their adults. He wants them to be very comfortable with that and not questioning that.
Speaking of that, what's the research and all that show on, if I had a kid who was 15 and I had him take Strength Finders, and then I had them take it when they're 25. Is it going to be the same, or did things evolve during those years?
So what you're going to see is when a child is 14, okay, their strengths are very formed, but that doesn't mean they know who they are yet. So remember, you got to answer, you're answering the questions during that time.
Right.
So the way you answer could be different. But what you're going to see is that specifically from age 14 to 25, there could be some shifts, not huge shifts, but shifts, because you also go through a period of where all you're doing is studying and you're in school, and then you come out and you work, and you start to really realize who you are when you do more than just study. You actually have to work for a living, and you have money now, so you get to choose some of the things you want to do, and you get to do. And so what you'll see is a progression of kind of an exponential line through 14 to 25, but then it levels off, and it just really levels off throughout time, where the strengths stop changing into your adulthood at all, because you know who you are. And this is where people get stubborn as older people, right? I know who I am. I know what works for me. I know what I like. I know, and so you'll see some shifts, but you shouldn't see major changes in anybody. Like if you saw Vin all of a sudden become consistent, you'd probably be concerned. Like, How could you even do that? That's a neural pathway. Well, it's actually, for you smart people on the phone here, it's actually a multitude of neural pathways that come together to produce a result. And he
had a stroke.
Yeah, that's it. But that's it. It has to be something major, catastrophic, to actually shift and change the way the neural pathways are reacting and engaging in order to produce a different result. And so, yes, they can change if you do have a catastrophic event, which, by the way, having a child is one of those. You'll see females change after having children because it is a huge change. And but I hope that answers your question, Bob, that
it does. And I was just thinking about it later in life too. I mean, I bet, okay, so I'm a fairly mature person. I know you can't tell by looking, but and what I've discovered is that I keep up. I've kept up with things, you know. I mean, I'm not that into rap music, but I'm just saying in general, I've kept up with like technology and all that's going on. And I think a lot of that probably has to do with my personality and my strengths. You know, the learner piece, for one thing, obviously is a driver, but
yeah, absolutely.
and then other people my age are totally out of it. I mean, you know, they can't even use an iPad, you know, so it's really different.
Anybody on the call have questions for these gentlemen today that joined us for this Strengthology session? Anything? Okay. Any closing comments from anybody from the guys on the panel today?
I had to, well, Van, we have one more thing in common. I was in my first rock band when I was 14, and I worked my way through UT Austin playing in a rock band. So
That's awesome.
we'll have to talk about it sometime.
Yeah, let's connect. That'd be great.
All right.
Great. Yeah. You know, the CliftonStrengths, the more you dig into it, the more you learn, and the more you work with others who have different strengths, the more you realize how much you really don't know about people. It's really been a fascinating journey. I love it, and I'll continue to use it. That's the one thing about being a learner, is I don't just love to learn, I love the whole process of it, and people are fascinating to me. And so this is like a lifelong project, right? This is going to just be an ongoing journey. So it's really been wonderful, especially getting to know Brandy and her software, because man, that
Cool
really
stuff.
helps tell the story.
Thank you very
One
much.
of the things I wanted to add, Brandy, is in looking and understanding on your show here what other people's profiles mean, it really helps me know more about myself, because the contrast and comparison is so educational. I really sometimes I look at mine, I think I understand it, but then when I get compared, or I just personally compare myself to someone else, after your insights, it really puts a lot more meaning on what I'm looking at within myself and how that better relates to everyone else. So very appreciative of what you do.
Yeah, I think that's such a great point, because not everybody gets to see all these variations. And so people just don't realize how special and unique they are as humans in this, you know, that are walking this earth today.
Yeah, for sure.
So the process over time is valuable, not just taking a look and going, oh, okay.
For sure.
Well, hey y'all, I have to bug out. I'm being called back to work, so
Right.
I gotta go.
Thank you all for joining so much, and thank you for your wonderful feedback, and your content is just really great. I will post it on YouTube, and I hope everybody has a great Monday.
Take care. Thank you.
Take care. Bye, y'all.
Bye, guys.